I was invited to my wife's work party without her knowledge. I saw my wife's boss dancing and touching my wife right in front of me. When my wife saw me, she smirked, "It's just for my promotion." Her boss replied, "At least I have something to offer and you don't." Everyone laughed, but they quickly shut up when they heard my answer. My name's Oliver Marsh, 34, high school English teacher, certified microwave chef, and apparently the last idiot to realize his marriage was doing a slow-motion car crash. If irony were a major subject, I'd teach it from personal experience. Alyssa and I met 8 years ago at a teacher-parent fundraiser where she was volunteering for community outreach, which basically meant looking too good to be there. She was the kind of woman who made ambition look like a beauty contest. Heels so high they could stab a cloud, hair that belonged in a commercial, and a voice that could convince you to buy anything, even regret. I was hooked like a cat seeing a laser pointer. Fast forward to now, and my mornings are a beautiful mix of coffee breath and grading essays that read like crime scenes. Meanwhile, Alyssa's off in her world of leather briefcases and buzzwords. She's always one corporate ladder away from forgetting she married a guy whose most dangerous office supply is a stapler. Our marriage had slid into that comfortable coma where you still say "love you," but it sounds like "okay, bye." She'd come home late smelling like expensive perfume and excuses. I'd pretend to be asleep because nothing kills a teacher's self-esteem faster than realizing your wife's work calendar gets more attention than you do. So when she said, "Babe, I can't make dinner Friday. The firm's hosting a small networking event," I just nodded like a good supportive husband. Teachers don't exactly scream corporate elite. My networking events involve coffee that tastes like burnt hope and arguments about commas. Still, something in her tone made my spidey sense tingle. That sweet, soft voice she uses when she's about to bury the truth under a compliment. Friday night rolled around, and I was home alone with a microwave lasagna and Netflix asking if I was still watching. I was. Because apparently, that's what faithful husbands do. We watch documentaries about penguins while our wives network with men named Damien. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Cynthia H., one of Alyssa's co-workers. She'd accidentally sent me a digital invite to the very same event. Accidentally. Right. That's like accidentally posting your vacation pics while you're on sick leave. I opened it anyway. Gold-trimmed font, penthouse ballroom, live jazz, cocktail attire, the whole 9 yards. It wasn't a small networking event. It was the Met Gala for people who charge $400 an hour to say, "Let's circle back." So I did what any reasonable, slightly suspicious husband would do. I dug out my best blazer, the one that still had chalk dust on it from parent-teacher night, and decided to crash the party. Was it petty? Yes. Was I proud of myself? Also yes. Because if marriage is about communication, sometimes you've got to communicate with your presence, uninvited and in bad lighting. On the drive there, I practiced what I'd say if someone asked why I was there. "Just dropping off her forgotten morals" was my favorite line, but I figured I'd save that for later. Traffic was a nightmare, as if the universe was trying to tell me, "Buddy, stay home and finish your lasagna." But I was committed, like a detective in a Hallmark movie no one asked for. When I got there, the building was the kind that makes you feel poor just by looking at it. Doormen with eyebrows sharper than my salary checked names at the entrance. I mumbled Alyssa Marsh, +1, and prayed the clipboard guy didn't have too much self-respect to question me. He didn't. Bless minimum wage indifference. Inside, the room glowed with the smell of money and perfume so strong it could knock out a horse. I hovered by the door, trying not to look like I was debating whether to steal a canopy or my dignity. A string quartet played something pretentious in the background. Every conversation sounded like a LinkedIn post with a pulse. Then I saw her. Alyssa, my wife, in a dress that probably had its own insurance policy. She was standing next to a man who looked like he'd been built by AI to sell watches and ruin marriages. Damien Shaw, her boss. Even his name sounded like a villain who golfed on weekdays. He was leaning in, laughing at something she said, hand resting a little too comfortably on her lower back. Friendly? Sure. If friendly meant, "Hope your husband's blind." I stood there, half in shock, half wondering if I should record it or just set something on fire for dramatic effect. Then a waiter appeared with a tray of champagne, and I took two. One for me, one for my crumbling faith in humanity. I watched her from across the room, trying to decode the language of touch and body angles like a CSI episode for marriage failures. And when she tilted her head back to laugh at whatever nonsense Damien was spewing, I knew. There it was, that spark. The one she used to save for me when I'd make her pancakes on Sundays. Now it was being spent on a guy who probably thinks the Oxford comma is a luxury item. I wanted to walk up right then and say, "Hi, honey, love the new accessory. Does he come with a warranty?" But I didn't, because anger was too easy. I needed precision. I needed her to see what she looked like from my side of the mirror. So I waited, watched, planned. Because if there's one thing a teacher knows how to do, it's observe bad behavior and grade it with quiet disappointment. Somewhere between the CEO's speech about innovation and synergy and the live band starting a butchered version of a Frank Sinatra song, I noticed Alyssa check her phone. My text. Hope the networking's fun. Save me a dance. Her eyes flicked around the room, nervous. When she spotted me near the bar, her smile froze mid-pixel like a lagging video call. She walked over, heels clicking like a countdown to disaster. "Oliver," she said, voice sugary but tense. "What are you doing here?" "Oh, you know," I replied, swirling my champagne. "Just expanding my network." Her eyes darted toward Damien, who was watching with that smug half-smile reserved for men who think they're the main character. "Babe," she started, "this is a work thing." "Right," I said. "Work, where you slow dance your way to quarterly bonuses." She sighed. That condescending exhale corporate wives use when explaining to their husbands why money trumps morality. Don't be ridiculous. But the problem was, I was starting to feel less ridiculous and more awake. Because for the first time in months, I was seeing her clearly, not as the perfect wife, but as a stranger in a sequined mask. I left before the music stopped. Didn't cause a scene, didn't throw my drink. I just walked out into the night, the cold air biting through my cheap blazer like karma with a sense of humor. On the drive home, I laughed, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I'd scream. At home, the house felt different. Quieter, emptier. The kind of quiet that makes you realize you've been living with an echo of someone instead of the real thing. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at our wedding photo on the fridge. She was smiling at me in that picture like I was her whole world. Now I wasn't even her plus one. The next morning, she came home with the same networking smell, perfume, and guilt disguised as confidence. I was still in my pajamas, grading papers. "Hey," I said, too casual. "How was the event?" "Fine," she answered, dropping her bag on the counter like she was auditioning for a commercial called Busy Woman Who Lies Well. "Lots of networking. You know how it is." "Sure," I said, scribbling vague answers, neat examples on a student's essay. She didn't get the joke. She poured herself coffee and asked, "You didn't wait up?" "No," I lied. "I figured you were busy impressing Damien." Her hand froze mid-stir, the spoon clinking like a tiny alarm. "Excuse me." "You heard me," I said softly. "I was there." Her face did this thing where it tried to smile and panic at the same time. "Oliver, why would you?" "Because I wanted to see what's so important that you keep missing bedtime stories and date nights." I cut in. "I wanted to see what I'm competing with. Turns out it's a guy who owns too many mirrors." She laughed nervously. "You're being paranoid." Maybe I was. But paranoia keeps people alive in horror movies, and apparently in marriage too. I didn't press it further that day, just filed the moment away in my mental cabinet labeled evidence for future meltdown. That night, I lay awake next to her while she scrolled through emails, pretending to be asleep again. Each click of her phone sounded like a tick of a bomb. If you've ever been in love and felt it slip between your fingers, you know that feeling, the weight of silence pressing against your chest. I wanted to ask, is he worth it? But I didn't. Instead, I whispered to myself, maybe I'm just a footnote in her success story. Somewhere between resentment and resignation, I fell asleep thinking about lesson plans and lawyers. Because that's the thing about being an English teacher. You can see foreshadowing from a mile away, but you still hope you're wrong. If only I'd known that one networking event was the prologue to the novel of my own downfall. Because the next chapter, yeah, that's where the Real story begins. Walking into that ballroom felt like crashing an Instagram influencer's fantasy, one that smelled like arrogance and overpriced perfume. I swear the air itself had a credit score. Chandeliers glittered like they were auditioning for a diamond commercial. Violins played something you were supposed to pretend to recognize. and everyone looked like they were here to negotiate their next yacht purchase. Me? I was just trying to make sure no one noticed my blazer came from a thrift store that proudly sold vintage as code for "someone probably died in this." The moment I stepped in, I knew I didn't belong. There was a champagne tower taller than my self-esteem, servers gliding around with trays of hors d'oeuvres so delicate they looked like the food equivalent of apology letters. And then there was me, clutching my coat like a shield and reminding myself that I had every right to be here, even if I wasn't on the guest list. Teachers might not wear Rolexes, but at least we know how to spell pretentious. I scanned the room. My heart was pounding, not because I was scared, but because I was angry enough to look calm. The kind of calm that makes people nervous, like a quiet dog that's definitely about to bite. Then I saw her. Alyssa, my wife. The woman who told me this was just a small networking event. She was on the dance floor, framed by golden light and bad decisions. She looked stunning. Of course she did. But right next to her was Damien Shaw, her boss, the walking cologne advertisement himself. He had that slick confidence of a man who's never had to pay for his own mistakes. His hand rested on her waist, not friendly boss territory. No, this was the kind of touch that comes with overtime pay and ruined marriages. She was laughing, head tilted back, eyes shining, body leaning into his. I'd seen that lean before. It used to be mine. That small tilt she did when she trusted you enough to let her guard down. Now, it was aimed squarely at a man who probably thought empathy was a software update. My jaw clenched, but I stayed put. Because walking over there, screaming like a soap opera husband, would have just made me another joke in a room full of people who drink gossip for breakfast. Instead, I moved toward the bar. The bartender gave me a look like, "Sir, are you lost or recently divorced?" I ordered whiskey neat, which is fancy talk for I'm pretending I can handle my emotions. I leaned on the counter, pretending to check my phone while watching my marriage audition for its replacement. Damien spun her, literally spun her, on the dance floor like they were starring in a Hallmark movie for sociopaths. When he pulled her close, my blood went from 0 to boiling in 3 seconds flat. Then she saw me. It was almost cinematic, the moment her eyes met mine across the crowd. Her laughter froze mid-sound. For a second, she looked human again, not the polished mannequin she played at work. Her lips parted slightly, and I could almost hear her thoughts. Oh crap, she didn't expect me to be here. Of course not. I was the safe, predictable husband who never colored outside the lines. She probably thought I was home alphabetizing lesson plans and talking to my toaster again. I set my glass down and walked toward them. Every step echoed. Or maybe that was just my heartbeat beating. What the hell is this? To the rhythm of the jazz band. A few heads turned, whispering. Corporate parties thrive on drama. It's the only thing richer than their appetizers. Damien saw me first, smirked like I'd interrupted his reflection. He didn't move his hand from her waist. He wanted me to see it, to know exactly what power felt like. "Oliver," Alyssa said, her voice sugar-coated but strained. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, calm, polite, terrifying. "Oh, you know me. I can't resist a good networking event." Damien chuckled, a low sound that made my fist itch. Didn't realize this was open to educators. The way he said it, like educators was a synonym for pests, made me want to show him what I educate with my hands. I looked him dead in the eye. "Yeah, we don't usually get invited to places where people sell their souls with complimentary champagne. Thought I'd check it out." Alyssa's face tightened. "Oliver, not here." "Oh, sorry. Would you prefer the hotel lobby?" A couple nearby actually snorted, trying not to laugh. Damien's smile slipped, just a fraction. He still had that smirk, though, the one rich guys wear when they think money can outtalk morality. "Relax, Oliver," he said. "It's just for her promotion. She's one of our top performers." "Yeah," I said. "I bet she performs really well." The crowd shifted, sensing tension like sharks in water. Alyssa grabbed my arm. "Please stop," she hissed under her breath, her nails digging into my skin. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Embarrassing myself?" I said, pulling my arm free. "Honey, I'm not the one slow dancing for job security." Damien laughed, not a genuine laugh, the kind that's meant to humiliate. "At least I have something to offer, and you don't." The laughter that followed from nearby tables wasn't loud, but it was enough to slice through me. That polite, poisonous laughter rich people use when they know they can afford cruelty. It was the sound of someone closing a door you didn't know was open. Alyssa's eyes widened, silently begging me to let it go. But she should have known better. Teachers don't let things go, we correct them. And this was one hell of a teachable moment. I turned to Damien and smiled, calm as Sunday coffee. You're right, I said. You've got something to offer, a lawsuit, an HR complaint, and, if I'm lucky, front row seats to your unemployment hearing. The laughter stopped cold. You could hear the band falter mid-note. Someone at the bar choked on their drink. Damien's grin cracked, like cheap porcelain. Excuse me, he said. Oh, come on, I replied. I teach research for a living, Damien. You really think your expense reports don't leave a paper trail? Maybe next time, try not to charge room service for two. Alyssa went pale. Oliver, stop it. I turned to her, lowering my voice. No, Alyssa, I'm done stopping. You told me this was about your career. I just didn't realize your career came with a king-sized bed and complimentary champagne. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone muttered, damn, and the band pretended to tune their instruments just to avoid eye contact. Damien's jaw tightened. You need to leave. I took a slow sip of whiskey. Oh, I will. But I just thought the company should know their employee of the year has been putting in extra hours, off the clock. The CEO, a woman with a haircut that could slice steel, was glaring from across the room. Alyssa was trembling now, torn between fury and fear. You're ruining my reputation, she whispered. I leaned in close enough for her to smell the truth. No, Alyssa, you did that yourself. I'm just narrating. Then I set the empty glass down, gave Damien one last glance, and smiled. Enjoy the party. I hear karma loves a good toast. And with that, I walked out, slowly, deliberately, through that sea of tailored suits and synthetic sympathy. People whispered as I passed. Some pitied me, some admired me, and some just loved the free entertainment. I didn't care. For the first time in months, I wasn't the clueless husband. I was the guy who finally stopped pretending everything was fine. Outside, the air was cold and honest. I stood under the city lights, hands shaking, half from adrenaline, half from disbelief. Somewhere behind me, laughter started again, forced and brittle, like the sound of glass trying to pretend it wasn't broken. I took a deep breath, exhaled the taste of betrayal, and muttered to myself, guess I'm uninvited now. The valet asked if I wanted my ticket validated. I almost laughed. Validated? Yeah, that's exactly what I needed, validation. But I just said, no thanks. Pretty sure my evening's been invalidated enough. As I drove home, the city lights blurred through my windshield like streaks of regret. I wasn't sure if I'd won that night or lost everything. But one thing was certain, I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't yell, didn't throw a punch, didn't even spill my drink, which, honestly, deserved an award for emotional composure. I just smiled. You know, that quiet, serial killer calm smile that terrifies people more than shouting ever could. That one. The whole room froze like someone had just announced the IRS was here doing random audits. I looked right at Damien Shaw, Mr. Perfect Jawline himself, and said, you're right, Damien. You've got something to offer. A lawsuit, an HR complaint, and, if I'm lucky, front row seats to your unemployment hearing. Silence. You could literally hear the ice cubes sweating in people's glasses. A violinist coughed into his elbow. Someone dropped a shrimp canopy. Even the chandeliers seemed to pause mid-sparkle. Alyssa blinked at me like she'd just been slapped with reality. Oliver, don't be dramatic. I chuckled. Me? Dramatic? Sweetheart, you're the one slow dancing your career into an early midlife crisis. A couple of nervous laughs rippled near the bar. Someone whispered, is he serious? I was very serious, but I wasn't finished. Teachers never are. We live for the full lecture. And by the way, Damien, I added, you might want to stop using company cards for your hotel visits. I teach research skills for a living. I did my homework. The room collectively gasped. If gossip had oxygen, that ballroom would have combusted. Alyssa went pale like a ghost who just realized she left the stove on. Damien's jaw flexed hard enough to chip a tooth. He tried to laugh it off, but it came out weird, like a dying car engine. You're bluffing, he said. I took a slow sip of my drink and smiled again. You think so? I can show you a slide presentation if you'd like. MLA format, properly cited. The CEO, Marion Quinn, the woman rumored to have fired a man mid-coffee break, was watching now from the balcony. Her eyes narrowed like she was mentally calculating legal damages. Alyssa grabbed my arm, whispering frantically, "Please stop." "Stop what?" I said, being honest. "I thought your company loved transparency." Her nails dug into my sleeve. "You're embarrassing me." "Embarrassing you?" I raised a brow. "I'm giving your networking event the only authenticity it's ever had." Someone snorted. I swear it was the violinist. Even the bartender looked like he wanted to high-five me. Damien finally snapped. "You've got some nerve, Marsh. You come in here, uninvited, and insult me in front of my colleagues." "Oh, relax," I said, swirling the whiskey. "You'll survive. You've already survived accountability this long." The laughter that followed was small but mighty. Every suppressed chuckle in the room was a little rebellion. I could feel the crowd shifting. The dynamic flipped. I wasn't the awkward husband anymore. I was the entertainment. Alyssa hissed, "You need to leave." I shrugged. "Sure. But before I go, let me just say." I raised my glass like a toast. "To ambition, may it never come with hotel receipts." The room erupted. Not with applause, but with that delicious, stunned silence where people want to clap, but fear HR repercussions. I drained my drink, set it down, and walked off. Mic dropped. Figuratively, of course. They didn't deserve the satisfaction of an actual crash. Outside in the hallway, adrenaline hit me like a freight train. My hands were shaking, my heart pounding, but damn it, it felt good. Years of polite smiles, swallowed arguments, and late-night disappointments, all released in one clean verbal knockout. I didn't even take the elevator. I needed the stairs, the burn in my legs matching the fire in my chest. By the time I hit the parking garage, I was half laughing, half crying, the emotional equivalent of jazz music. I sat in the car, breathing hard, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. Who the hell was that guy? I muttered. Because I like him. The drive home was quiet except for the hum of the engine and my brain replaying the scene on a loop. The look on Damien's face, the shock in Alyssa's eyes. It was the first time in years she'd looked at me like I mattered. Pity it took public humiliation to get there. When I pulled into the driveway, the house was dark. I didn't turn on the lights. Just walked straight to the kitchen, grabbed a beer, and sat at the table staring at our wedding photo again. The same picture that mocked me last night now felt like Exhibit A in the case of Oliver versus Denial. I took a long sip. "Well, buddy," I told my photo self. "Guess we're finally the main character." I should have felt guilty for airing our dirty laundry in public, but guilt is for people who still think they're wrong. I was done apologizing for expecting respect. Around midnight, headlights swept across the window, Alyssa's car. I didn't move. She came in, heels clicking like gunshots on tile. "Are you proud of yourself?" she snapped, slamming her purse down. "Immensely," I said. "You should have seen Damien's face. Pure art. You humiliated me." I shrugged. "You danced with your boss in front of half the city. I just provided the soundtrack." She crossed her arms. "You've ruined my reputation." I laughed, loud, genuine. "Honey, your reputation was already on a discount rack. I just put it under better lighting." Her eyes flashed. "You're unbelievable." "Yeah," I said. "That's what happens when you underestimate a teacher with access to Google." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the fridge and the faint tremor in her breath. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me, and maybe she didn't. Because this wasn't the pushover husband who apologized for existing. This was the guy she forgot I could be. The one who noticed, remembered, and finally stopped pretending not to see. "Finally," she whispered, "you've destroyed everything." "No," I said quietly. "You did. I just stopped cleaning up after you." She turned away, muttering something about, "How could you?" and stormed upstairs. The door slammed. I waited for the guilt to follow. It didn't. Instead, there was this strange peace, like finally deleting a toxic group chat. I slept on the couch that night, but it was the best sleep I'd had in months. The next morning, I woke up early, brewed coffee, and stared out the window as the sun rose. Alyssa came down eventually, wearing that same flawless work outfit that screamed, "Nothing happened." She wouldn't look at me. "I'm leaving for the office," she said flatly. "Tell Damien I said hi." I replied without looking up from my mug. She froze mid-step. "You're unbelievable." "Still," I said, "guess I'm consistent." When the door slammed behind her, I smiled into my coffee. I didn't know it yet, but that was the last time she'd leave the house as my wife in spirit, even if not yet on paper. Because from that point forward, I stopped being her safety net. I started being her lesson plan. Later that day, word spread faster than gossip at a PTA meeting. My phone buzzed nonstop, texts from coworkers, even students. Apparently, someone at the party filmed the whole thing. My little mic drop moment had gone semi-viral in corporate group chats. One of my fellow teachers, Reggie, called laughing. "Dude, you roasted a senior VP on camera. You're a legend." "Yeah, great," I said. "Can I add that to my resume?" "Totally." Under conflict resolution, advanced. By lunchtime, I'd received 3 emails from random strangers thanking me for standing up against workplace predators. I hadn't set out to become a folk hero, but apparently, people love a good underdog story. I was mid-sandwich when Alyssa called. I debated answering, then decided curiosity was stronger than pride. Her voice was low, controlled. "What did you do? Besides expose your boyfriend's tax-deductible dates?" I asked. "This isn't funny, Oliver. HR wants to meet with me." "Oh no," I said, feigning shock. "Corporate consequences? For bad behavior? Say it ain't so. You've destroyed my career." "No, Alyssa, you destroyed our marriage. The career was just collateral damage." She hung up. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my sandwich. That evening, I drove to the school gym to help set up for the spring dance. The other teachers teased me. "Hey, viral man, need a bodyguard?" But under the humor, I felt something new: respect. Turns out, nothing boosts your credibility like publicly torching a guy named Damien. When I got home, the house was empty again. Only her perfume lingered, a faint, ghostly reminder of everything fake. I stood in the living room, looked around, and realized I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed who she used to be, and maybe who I used to be before her ambition turned me into background noise. That night, I opened my laptop and started documenting everything: texts, receipts, screenshots. If my little mic drop had started a war, I wasn't showing up unarmed. Teachers know one thing better than anyone: evidence matters. As I organized the files into neat folders, I whispered to myself, "Homework's due, Damien." Then I saved it all under one glorious title: Revenge 101. The drive home was quiet, the kind of quiet you can feel pressing against your ribs. The only soundtrack was the squeak of windshield wipers and the distant hum of my conscience laughing at me. Alyssa sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed, face turned toward the window like she was auditioning for a Sad Wife perfume ad. She hadn't said a word since we left the ballroom. I, on the other hand, was humming Another One Bites the Dust. Not to be petty. Okay, exactly, to be petty. When we pulled into the driveway, the motion sensor light flicked on like it wanted front row seats. I parked, killed the engine, and waited. Nothing. She didn't move. Just sat there, stewing in whatever blend of rage and embarrassment she'd cooked up. Finally, I opened my door and said, "You coming in? Or are you waiting for Damien to pick you up in the company car?" That did it. She slammed the door and marched inside like she was storming the capital of moral superiority. The second the front door shut behind us, she spun around. "You embarrassed me." "Embarrassed you?" I said, kicking off my shoes. "You were slow dancing with your boss like it was dancing with the ethics violations." "I'm pretty sure I'm the victim here." Her eyes flared. "You made a scene in front of my colleagues." "Correction," I said, pointing at her. "I made a statement. The scene was already there. You choreographed it with Damien's hand on your waist." She let out one of those sharp laughs that aren't laughs at all, more like the verbal version of eye-rolling. "You'll never understand what it takes to succeed." "Oh, believe me," I said. "I understand. It takes a man with a corporate title, a dimly lit hotel bar, and a wife with selective amnesia. God, you're impossible." She poured herself a glass of water like she was in control, but her hands were shaking. "I did it for us." That one almost made me choke. "For us?" That's adorable. Nothing says teamwork like selling your dignity for a promotion. Bravo, Mrs. Marsh, Employee of the Year and Spouse of the Week. "Stop twisting it," she snapped. "You don't know what it's like to have pressure on you. People expect results." "Yeah, well," I said, grabbing a carton of orange juice from the fridge, "I expect my wife not to flirt her way through management. We all live with disappointment." She glared. "You're jealous because you're stuck in a dead-end job." I clinked my glass against hers. "To us, the corporate edition. One of us sells integrity, the other grades essays." I took a sip. "Guess who sleeps better?" Her voice dropped. I worked hard to get where I am. Hard, I said. Oh, I bet. The silence that followed was nuclear. We stood there, two strangers sharing a mortgage and a kitchen full of tension. Finally, she muttered, "I can't talk to you when you're like this," and disappeared up the stairs. I stared after her, then looked at the clock. 1:47 a.m. Wonderful. Another night of insomnia sponsored by Betrayal Inc. I cleaned the counter just to have something to do. Somewhere between wiping crumbs and questioning my life choices, I realized I wasn't even angry anymore. I was numb, like the emotional version of Novocaine. The kind of numb that comes after you finally stop pretending things are fine. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. She waltzed downstairs in a navy dress, hair immaculate, smelling like apologies she'd never make. "Morning," she said, eyes glued to her phone. "Morning," I replied. "How's the damage control plan going?" She sighed. "I'm heading into the office early. Damien and I." "Let me stop you right there," I said. "I don't want to know how that sentence ends. It can only go downhill." She frowned. "Oliver, this attitude isn't helping." "I'm not trying to help," I said. "I'm observing. It's my hobby now." She grabbed her purse, muttering something about immaturity, and left. The door shut, and for a brief, perfect second, the house exhaled with me. I spent that Saturday doing what teachers do best, grading papers and reevaluating life choices. My students' essays on Romeo and Juliet suddenly hit harder. Miscommunication leads to tragedy. Yeah, no kidding. Around noon, my friend Reggie called. "Bro," he said between laughs, "I heard you lit up a corporate gala like a 4th of July barbecue." "I wouldn't say lit up," I said modestly. "More like delivered constructive feedback at high volume." He whistled. "Man, you've got brass." Half the teachers' lounge saw that clip. Someone posted it with the caption, "When the English teacher finally uses words for evil." "You're a legend." "Fantastic," I said dryly. "Maybe it'll boost parent-teacher attendance." When I hung up, I couldn't decide whether to feel proud or humiliated. Maybe both. There's a weird freedom in public scandal. You can't fall off the pedestal if someone already smashed it. Alyssa didn't come home until late again. I was on the couch, TV muted, lights low. She walked in like a ghost with a designer bag. "Rough day?" I asked. She dropped her keys with a clatter. Marianne Quinn called me into her office. She said there's going to be an internal review. Translation, I said, HR sharpening their knives. "This isn't funny." "Oh, it's hilarious," I said. "Karma finally put your career on the syllabus." She glared. "You wanted this, didn't you? To see me fail." I shook my head. "No. I wanted to see you remember what decency looks like. But apparently, that's above your pay grade." Her eyes watered, but she blinked the tears away. Alyssa hated crying. Ruins the mascara and the narrative. "I was trying to build something for us," she said quietly. "And instead," I replied, "you burned it down. Congratulations on your management skills." She didn't reply, just went upstairs and shut the door again. The click echoed louder than her heels. Later that night, I couldn't sleep, so I took a walk. The neighborhood was still, rows of perfect houses pretending to host perfect lives. From the outside, ours looked fine too. Trimmed lawn, warm light, the illusion of stability. But behind the curtains, it was all smoke and unpaid emotional rent. I sat on the porch swing, thinking about how love can fade quietly, like a song losing volume, until one day you realize it's been silent for years. About how I kept waiting for her to come back, not physically, but emotionally. She never did. She'd left long before that ballroom. When I finally went inside, the house smelled like her perfume and distance. I poured another glass of juice, habit at this point, and stared at my reflection in the dark window. "You're officially in the sequel," I told myself. The one where the nice guy stops being the fool. Sunday morning came with the awkwardness of a bad hangover. She avoided me entirely, eating breakfast standing up like conversation was contagious. I tried small talk once. "You know, Damien's probably deleting emails as we speak." She didn't look up. "You're cruel." "Maybe. Or maybe I'm just finally fluent in your language." That afternoon, I went to my sister's place. Jenna's the kind of person who says what everyone else is too polite to say. She poured me coffee, sat across the table, and said, "So you finally found out your wife's a networking overachiever?" "Yup. Good for you," she said. "Took you long enough." I frowned. "You knew?" "Please." The woman talks like a LinkedIn post. We all knew. I groaned. Fantastic. So I'm the only idiot without a memo. Jenna shrugged. Better late than never. So what's the plan? Survive Monday, I said. Apparently she's under review. She smirked. Corporate karma's a beautiful thing. You just make sure you don't let guilt make you stupid. Meaning? Meaning she's going to spin this as your fault. Don't fall for it. I nodded. Noted. By the time I got home, Alyssa was already there, curled on the couch with her laptop. The glow from the screen made her look softer, younger, almost like the woman I married. For a second, nostalgia punched me in the gut. Then I saw the email subject line on her screen. Statement of events, preliminary HR review. I walked past her. She didn't look up. You're early, she said. Couldn't stay away from my biggest fan. Oliver, her voice cracked slightly. Do you hate me? I paused. Hate's a strong word. Let's go with deeply disappointed by your life choices. Rolls off the tongue better. She closed the laptop. I made a mistake. Which part? I asked. The dancing? The lying? Or the underestimating the guy who literally grades evidence for a living? She looked down. I didn't mean to hurt you. That's the thing, I said. You didn't mean to. You just did. Over and over. She whispered, Can we start over? I laughed softly. Sure. You bring the time machine. I'll bring the self-respect. The room went quiet again. She turned away, shoulders trembling. For a second, I felt the tiniest flicker of sympathy. Then I remembered the look on Damien's face when he taunted me, and the flicker died. I left her there on the couch and went upstairs. Lying in bed, I realized something. I wasn't waiting for her apology anymore. I was waiting for my exit. The next week would prove that silence can be the loudest revenge, but for now, I just wanted to rest. My marriage had exploded, sure, but at least I finally stopped pretending the ashes were glitter. The morning after our verbal cage match, I woke up to sunlight that felt like an interrogation. You know that kind of brightness that makes you question your life choices? Yeah, that one. The coffee machine wheezed at me like it, too, was disappointed. I wasn't angry anymore. That's the dangerous part. Anger burns fast, strategy simmers slow. And that morning, I wasn't a husband, I was a data collector. Because when your wife starts gaslighting you with corporate PowerPoint logic, the only thing left to do is turn into Sherlock Holmes with Wi-Fi. I wasn't about to throw another emotional tantrum while she controlled the narrative. I needed evidence. Cold, unemotional, lawyer-approved receipts. So I became Detective Oliver Marsh, part-time English teacher, full-time husband investigator. She'd left early again, off to meetings. I made a note of the time. 6:48 a.m. meetings that start before sunrise sound less like office work and more like alibi rehearsal. I opened my laptop and stared at the glowing cursor like it was a moral crossroad. Then I typed her email into Google. Her firm's name, a few keywords, and boom, LinkedIn updates, tagged photos, and a couple of very interesting conference check-ins that didn't match her late nights at the office story. A finance summit in Chicago. Cute. She told me she was at a team retreat in Vermont that same weekend. Next, I checked our shared credit card statements. I know, it's petty, but marriage has a fine print clause about financial transparency. I scrolled through the transactions, hotel charges, Uber receipts, fancy restaurant dinners labeled client meals. Except I recognized one of those client meals, the restaurant where I'd once proposed to her. The universe really loves irony. I printed everything, filed it neatly in a folder, and labeled it Alyssa Q1 Integrity Review. Petty? Absolutely. Therapeutic? Even more so. By noon, my classroom was empty and my brain was spinning. I kept replaying her words. You're being dramatic. You'll never understand success. I did it for us. Funny how betrayal always sounds noble in corporate English. I wanted to believe maybe I was overreacting, that this was all a big misunderstanding. But then my phone buzzed. It was her sister, Harper, the human megaphone of bad advice. Oliver, you need to stop this nonsense, she said without even saying hello. Alyssa's really upset. I bet she is, I said. People usually get upset when they get caught. Caught doing what? Networking. Networking usually doesn't involve hotel minibars and scented candles. Wow, Harper said. You sound insecure. Insecure. I repeated, letting out a short laugh. Insecurity doesn't come with timestamps and room service invoices. There was a long pause. Then she muttered, You've changed. Good, I said and hung up. I'll give Harper credit, though. Her call lit a fuse. If they were circling the wagons, I must have been getting close. That afternoon, I stopped by Alyssa's firm. I told the receptionist I was dropping off some files for her. Classic move. Act like you belong, people assume you do. While waiting, I noticed a familiar name on the visitor log. Damien Shaw, conference room 4B. I smiled to myself. The man had the subtlety of a marching band. I didn't see Alyssa that day, but I didn't need to. I got what I came for, a glimpse of the environment. I saw the assistants whispering, the glances exchanged when I said her name. Office gossip spreads faster than a caffeine shortage. She wasn't fooling anyone. That night, I didn't confront her. Not yet. I played it cool. Made dinner, asked about her day, pretended like we were still normal. She gave me vague answers about corporate restructuring and client onboarding. I nodded, smiled, and mentally wrote down every lie. After she went to bed, I went back to my new second office, the dining table. Laptop open, phone ready, folder expanding faster than a high school gossip chain. I checked her social media. Most of her posts were work-related, but in one photo, posted by someone else from her firm, I spotted her reflection in a wine glass. Sitting next to Damien. Same suit. Same night. Caption: when teamwork meets after-work wine. I laughed out loud. Busted by Instagram, I muttered. The modern-day truth serum. By the third day, I had enough material to make a Netflix docuseries. The corporate cheater next door. Receipts, call logs, calendar entries. It was all there. She'd been billing hotel stays as team retreats. Her team seemed to consist of exactly two people, her and Damien. If that's teamwork, then I'm the Queen of England. Thursday evening, she came home early, which was unusual. She looked tired, guilty tired. The kind of exhaustion that comes from juggling lies. Hey, she said softly. We need to talk. Oh, finally, I said. Is it about the quarterly integrity report, or are we going straight to the performance review? She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Just wondering if your hotel's loyalty program gives points for moral bankruptcy. Her jaw clenched. You've been snooping. Investigating, I corrected. There's a difference. Snooping's emotional. Investigation's procedural. She threw her purse on the counter. God, you're unbelievable. Funny, that's what Damien said about you. Probably in a much more flattering tone. Stop it, Oliver, she snapped. You're blowing this out of proportion. Oh, really? I said, walking to the table and pulling out my folder. I slid the stack of papers toward her like a teacher returning a failed test. I've got spreadsheets that say otherwise. She froze, staring at the pages. Her face drained. Where did you get this? Public record, joint accounts, digital breadcrumbs. It's amazing what a man can find when his wife thinks he's too boring to notice. You've invaded my privacy. I laughed. You invaded our marriage. I'm just grading your honesty. Her hands trembled. You're destroying us. No, Alyssa. You already did. I'm just writing the bibliography. She didn't reply. Just stood there, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I remembered the champagne glass in Damien's hand and the smirk on her face when she saw me that night. And the pity turned to resolve. I calmly gathered the papers back into the folder. Here's how this goes, I said. You stop pretending I'm crazy. You stop lying about business trips. And you start thinking about what honesty costs, because next time, your company's going to get the full report. Her eyes filled with tears. You wouldn't. Oh, sweetheart, I said, smiling. You really don't know me anymore. That night, she slept in the guest room. I heard her crying once, quietly, like she thought it would buy sympathy. It didn't. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, packed my daughter Maya's lunch. I was determined not to let Alyssa's circus bleed into my kids' world. Maya came downstairs, half asleep, dragging her backpack. Morning, Daddy. Morning, superstar, I said, ruffling her hair. Ready to go wow the world? She nodded, yawning. Mom's still asleep? Yeah, I said softly. She's working from home. I dropped Maya off at school, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to calm. The calm of a man who's done being played. Back home, I sat at the table, staring at my folder. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet. I just knew that this time, I held the power. Alyssa could spin all the stories she wanted, but I had facts. And facts don't need PR. By the weekend, she tried to act normal again. Made breakfast, small talk, even joked about work. You know, she said carefully, Damien might be getting transferred. Things are changing. I smiled into my coffee. Oh, I bet they are. Her eyes flicked up, reading me, realizing something she should have known long ago. Quiet husbands are scarier than jealous ones. Because jealousy reacts. Quiet calculates. When she left the table, I whispered to myself, game on. That night, I sat outside on the porch, folder in hand, moonlight shining across the pages. Proof, truth, power, all tucked neatly under my arm. I didn't know where it would lead yet. Divorce court, HR scandal, maybe both, but I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the oblivious husband. The next time Alyssa tried to rewrite our story, I'd be the one holding the pen. 2 weeks after I'd turned into Sherlock Holmes with a wedding ring, Alyssa's company decided to host the big one, the annual Penthouse Gala. The kind of event where people pretend to celebrate teamwork while secretly updating their resumes and stabbing each other with compliments. She mentioned it at breakfast like it was just another day. The firm's doing the gala Friday, she said, stirring her coffee. It's invitation only. Formal. Translation, don't come, Oliver, we've had enough public scenes. Invitation only, huh? I said, buttering toast with the calm precision of a man plotting mild revenge. Guess I'll just stay home and alphabetize my regrets. She smiled that tight, corporate smile that says, I'm ignoring your sarcasm because I might still need your tax returns. It's not your scene, Oliver. Everyone there will be from the firm. Yes, I said. Wouldn't want to lower the average ambition level. She rolled her eyes. Can we not start? Oh, we started 8 years ago, I said. You're just now realizing it. By Thursday, she'd ordered a new gown, emerald green, floor length, the kind of dress that makes photographers forget their wives. It arrived in a box big enough to bury my dignity in. She tried it on that evening, spinning in front of the mirror. What do you think? She asked, half expecting me to say something jealous or petty. I looked at her reflection. You look beautiful, I said honestly. Too bad your soul's working part-time. She glared. You really can't help yourself, can you? Oh, I can, I said. I just choose not to. She sighed, muttered something about needing this promotion, and went upstairs. I sat there, sipping my coffee, thinking about the folder of evidence hidden under the floorboard in my study. The HR complaint draft, the screenshots, the receipts. I'd been holding on to them, unsure of what I wanted. Revenge, closure, or just the satisfaction of watching her world wobble. But that night, as I watched her pack perfume and false confidence, I realized I didn't need to choose. I could have all three. Friday came faster than karma. She left early, heels clicking like countdowns to disaster. I waited an hour, showered, shaved, and put on my best suit. Navy blue, pressed shirt, tie straight. I looked like a man attending either a wedding or an execution. In a way, it was both. I rented a car, a black sedan that didn't scream teacher salary. Slipped into it like a ghost on a mission. When I pulled up to the penthouse building, the valet didn't even blink. Confidence opens doors, insecurity waits outside. The elevator ride up was silent except for the soft jazz leaking from the speakers. My reflection in the mirrored walls smirked back at me. You sure about this, Marsh? It asked silently. I was. The doors opened to a golden glow. Glass walls, city skyline, laughter, the faint smell of champagne and self-delusion. Waiters floated by with trays of caviar that looked like expensive frog eggs. Guests mingled in designer armor, talking about market trends and team synergy like they were reciting gospel. And there she was, Alyssa, standing in a corner, laughing that fake laugh I used to love. Damien stood beside her, glass in hand, looking like the poster boy for workplace misconduct. His hand hovered dangerously close to her back again, and my jaw flexed. I didn't approach immediately. Timing is everything. Instead, I drifted toward the bar, nodded at the bartender, and ordered whiskey, again neat. It had become my rebellion of choice. The speeches started an hour later. The CEO, Marianne Quinn, stepped up with her diamond glare and gave the kind of speech that makes people clap out of fear. This year, she said, we celebrate growth, excellence, and integrity. Oh, the irony. Integrity, my ass. Then came the toast. Damien was handed the mic. He tapped it twice and smiled at the crowd. Here's to the people who make this company great, especially my team. He looked right at Alyssa when he said it. My wife smiled, pretending not to bask in the subtext. That was my cue. I waited until the laughter died, until the last champagne flute was raised, until all eyes were focused forward. Then I stepped out from the crowd, my glass lifted high. Actually, I said loudly, I'd like to make a toast too. The ripple that went through the room was delicious. Alyssa turned, color draining faster than the open bar. Oliver, she whispered, panic flickering behind her eyes. What are you doing here? Networking, I said cheerfully. You told me it's important. Damien shifted uncomfortably. This is a private event. Oh, I know, I said smiling. And I'm feeling very exclusive right now. The CEO raised an eyebrow. And you are? Oliver Marsh, I said, husband of your star employee, Alyssa Marsh. A few gasps. Someone near the back whispered, oh, that's him. News travels fast in gossip circles. I clinked my glass lightly. To my lovely wife and her boss, Damien. Proof that some promotions come with benefits and hotel bills. A single second of silence stretched into eternity. Then the whispers started. Someone dropped a fork. The DJ froze mid-button. Alyssa's hand trembled around her glass. Oliver, please. Relax, I said. It's just transparency. Isn't that what this company prides itself on? Honesty, accountability, open communication? I'm just doing my part. Damien's face twisted. You've got a lot of nerve showing up here. Thanks, I said. It's my best quality, right after literacy and emotional endurance. The CEO's sharp voice cut through the tension. What is this about? I smiled and reached into my jacket pocket, pulling out a crisp folder. Evidence, I said simply. Screenshots, receipts, expense reports. Everything your HR team needs for a nice, clean Monday meeting. A murmur rippled through the room. Alyssa looked like she might faint. Damien looked like he already had. Oliver, please, Alyssa said, voice breaking. Not here. Why not? I said. This is your world, isn't it? You brought me into it when you decided integrity was optional. So, let's share with everyone. The CEO took the folder from my hand, flipping through the pages. Her face went from confusion to disbelief to pure fury in record time. Mr. Shaw, she said icily. We'll discuss this first thing Monday morning. Oh, don't wait that long, I said. Your investors might appreciate urgency. Alyssa reached for my arm. Stop. I looked at her, really looked at her. The woman I once thought was my future now looked like a stranger wearing her skin. You could have just told me the truth, I said quietly. Would have hurt less. The crowd parted as I walked toward the elevator. No one said a word. Even the jazz stopped. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, turning back just long enough to raise my glass. To honesty, I said. It's a rare vintage. The doors closed. The ride down was silent except for the faint buzz of adrenaline. My reflection in the mirrored panel smiled back, satisfied. I wasn't proud exactly. Pride implies approval. What I felt was justified. Outside, I handed the valet my ticket. The guy grinned. Hell of a show up there, sir. I smirked. Yeah, the reviews will be brutal. When I got home, the house was quiet. I hung my jacket, loosened my tie, and poured a drink. Whiskey, of course. It burned perfectly. Somewhere between the ice melting and the clock striking midnight, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I didn't answer. 10 minutes later, a text from Alyssa. Why would you humiliate me like that? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. Consider it my annual performance review. Then I muted her. For the first time in years, the silence in my house didn't feel empty. It felt earned. I sat there, staring out the window at the streetlights, thinking about how strange it is, the way truth changes shape once you stop running from it. 2 weeks ago, I'd have given anything to fix our marriage. Now, I wouldn't give a nickel to save her reputation. And as I leaned back, whiskey in hand, the thought hit me. People spend their lives chasing promotions, titles, applause, but nothing feels better than peace. There's a special kind of silence that follows public humiliation, the kind where even your house feels like it's holding its breath. I woke up the morning after the gala expecting the world to look different. It didn't. The sun still rose, birds still screamed outside like they were being paid hourly, and my coffee still tasted like burnt pennants. But something inside me had shifted. I wasn't the same man who let his wife run public relations for their marriage. I was now the guy who'd crashed a corporate penthouse party, toasted betrayal with champagne, and dropped evidence like confetti. And damn, It felt good. By 9 a.m., Alyssa's name was trending in the local office group chats. I didn't even need to check. I could feel it. Somewhere, Damien Shaw was pacing in his $1,200 shoes, realizing his empire of charm had been built on a foundation of stupid. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through emails from colleagues who were too polite to mention the incident, but too curious not to hint. Heard you had quite the evening, one of them wrote. Nice to see poetic justice in action. Another, my wife says she's proud of you, man. I didn't even know his wife. Then came the cherry on top, a short, blunt email from Marion Quinn, the CEO herself. Mr. Marsh, thank you for bringing an important matter to our attention. Rest assured, it's being handled internally. Sincerely, M. Quinn. Translation: Damien was toast, and Alyssa's halo had officially been repossessed. Around noon, Alyssa called. I didn't answer. She tried again, then again. Finally, I picked up, mostly because I wanted to hear how she'd spin this. Her voice came through shaky but polished, like she was holding herself together with LinkedIn affirmations. Oliver, she said, we need to talk. Oh, absolutely, I said, sipping my coffee. Do you want to do this like an HR meeting, or should I take minutes? This isn't funny, she said. You went too far. Really? I thought the gala was all about transparency. I was just contributing. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I let that sit for a second. Then I said, funny, you said that last time too. I guess humiliation is becoming your love language. You don't understand what this means for me, she snapped. Oh, I do, I said. It means your corporate fairy tale just turned into a cautionary PowerPoint. She went quiet for a moment. Then, softer, they've suspended Damien. I smiled into the phone. Oh, so HR does exist. I was starting to think it was a myth. They're investigating, and they want to talk to me Monday. Perfect, I said. You've got a whole weekend to rehearse your victim monologue. Her tone cracked. Oliver, please. Don't do this. I made a mistake. No, I said, standing and pacing the kitchen. You made a series of calculated choices. Mistakes are what you make when you hit reply all. She started crying then, soft, desperate tears that used to melt me. But now, they sounded like background noise. You destroyed my career, she whispered. I laughed, not cruelly, just truthfully. No, Alyssa, you destroyed it. I just handed out the flyers. She hung up. I stared at the phone for a moment, then set it down. The thing about exposing people, they never thank you for the truth. They just hate you for ruining their illusion. That afternoon, I went for a walk. The fall air had that crisp, knife-edged honesty I liked. I stopped by the corner coffee shop, and the barista, a college kid who once asked me to help edit his essay, grinned and said, Dude, that video of you at the gala? Legendary. I blinked. Video. He pulled out his phone and showed me. There I was, mid-toast, glass raised, delivering my line with the calmness of a man who'd stopped caring. To my lovely wife and her boss. Proof that some promotions come with benefits and hotel bills. The crowd's stunned silence played beautifully on camera. Someone had filmed it from across the room and uploaded it with the caption, When the teacher teaches the CEO's boss a lesson. It had 500,000 views. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Well, I said, guess I'm trending for the first time since that Shakespeare meme. By the time I got home, my phone was a digital riot. Texts, missed calls, even a message from a podcast producer asking if I wanted to share my story. I ignored it all. Revenge doesn't need interviews. It just needs results. A few hours later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Alyssa standing there. No makeup, eyes red, wearing the same trench coat she used to wear on date nights. Irony's favorite outfit. Can we talk? She asked. I crossed my arms. Sure. You want to sit where you lied or where you ate? She sighed. You've made your point. Oh, I've got more points than your performance review, I said, stepping aside. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where we'd built years of small talk and avoided real conversations. She looked around, like the room itself had turned against her. Oliver, she said softly, you don't know what it's like to work under that kind of pressure. I raised a brow. You're right. I just work with teenagers who think punctuation is optional. But please, tell me more about your dangerous life in marketing. She ignored the jab. Damien pushed boundaries. I didn't want it to go that far. Sure, I said. You just wanted the corner office, not the corner bed. She winced. You're cruel. Cruel is what you did. I said. This is called reciprocation. Tears welled again, but I wasn't falling for it this time. Oliver, please. I've lost everything. I leaned back, arms folded. Then consider this a fresh start. She stared at me. You're really not going to forgive me, are you? Forgive, I said, chuckling. Forgiveness is for people who trip. You built a whole obstacle course. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time, she looked small, like the empire she built on manipulation had finally collapsed. I almost pitied her. Almost. She stood slowly. I'll pack some things tonight, she said quietly. Take your time, I said. Just don't take the coffee maker. That one still tells the truth. When she left, the house fell back into silence. But this time, it didn't sting. It felt clean, peaceful, honest. I poured myself a drink and raised it toward the empty doorway. To exposure, I said. May it always come with good lighting. The following Monday was, by all accounts, a bloodbath. Word from my insider, Cynthia, the same co-worker who'd accidentally sent me the original invite, was that Marion had gone full Game of Thrones on everyone involved. Damien was officially terminated. The company issued a vague statement about leadership transitions and maintaining ethical standards. Corporate translation, he's gone, we're pretending we care. As for Alyssa, she was placed on leave pending review. HR speak for, we're deciding whether to fire you or just bury you quietly. Cynthia sent me a text that afternoon. You didn't hear it from me, but Marion said your presentation was the most efficient whistleblowing she's ever seen. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my sandwich. Whistleblowing. That's one way to put it. By the end of the week, Alyssa moved into her sister's place. Harper called, of course, furious. You ruined her life. Yeah, I said. And before I did, she was using mine as a ladder. You're vindictive, she spat. I prefer results-oriented. She hung up. I toasted the air again. To results. Life started feeling normal again. Or, at least, a new version of normal. The kind where you come home to peace instead of performance. I redecorated the living room, got rid of her endless candles labeled ambition and focus, replaced them with one simple scent, sanity. I even started sleeping better, which, after years of anxiety dreams, felt like a promotion in itself. But the best moment came that Friday afternoon when I checked my mail and found an envelope with the firm's logo. Inside was a short letter from Marianne Quinn herself. Mr. Marsh, the information you provided allowed us to take immediate and necessary action. We are grateful for your integrity. I taped it to my fridge, right next to Maya's drawing of our family. Just two people now, me and her, stick figures smiling in crayon sunshine. It looked right. That night, as I tucked Maya into bed, she asked, Daddy, is Mommy coming home soon? I brushed her hair back gently. Not for a while, sweetheart. Did you and Mommy fight? I hesitated, then smiled softly. No, Pumpkin. We just stopped pretending. She nodded, half asleep, and whispered, I like when it's quiet. Me too, I said. I turned off the lights, walked into the living room, and sat down with my drink. Outside, the city buzzed, unaware that somewhere, a quiet man had finally won his own story back. And as I sat there, the words rolled through my head again. Quiet husbands are scarier than jealous ones. Because while jealousy shouts, quiet keeps receipts, and then chooses the perfect moment to read them out loud. By the time the first legal envelope slid under my door, the whole situation had stopped feeling like heartbreak and started feeling like paperwork. There's a difference between losing someone and realizing you just unsubscribed from their nonsense. I'd already hit the emotional unsubscribe button weeks ago. Now it was time to make it official. Alyssa had been on leave from the firm for 3 weeks. Translation: exiled with pay until HR could figure out how to pretend she'd left voluntarily. The tabloids didn't care, though. Someone leaked the story to a gossip site under the headline, CEO's protege suspended after gala scandal. The comments were brutal, deliciously so. I didn't write them, but I might have upvoted a few. The night the envelope came, I was grading essays. Irony, always punctual, made sure the assignment topic was personal accountability in Macbeth. The universe has jokes. The knock on the door came soft, but professional. A man in a gray suit handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope like it was a bomb he didn't want responsibility for. Oliver Marsh. That's me, I said. He nodded. You've been served. I stared at the envelope. Ah, The modern love letter. He didn't laugh. Process servers rarely appreciate sarcasm. I closed the door, dropped the envelope on the kitchen table, and just looked at it for a while. My name and hers printed together one last time. Mr. and Mrs. Marsh, in 12-point Times New Roman. It was strangely poetic. The end of our marriage came in the same font as my students' essays. When I finally opened it, I half expected confetti or glitter, some final insult from the universe. Instead, it was clean, sterile legal language. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Grounds: irreconcilable differences. That phrase always made me laugh. We'd been reconciling differences since day one. She liked ambition, I liked sleep. She liked rooftop cocktails, I liked health insurance. The only thing we ever fully agreed on was Wi-Fi speed. The next morning, I called my lawyer, an old college friend named Ben. He's one of those guys who looks like he should narrate crime documentaries. Calm voice, lethal logic. "About time," he said when I told him. "You ready to be single, Professor Heartbreak?" "I'm ready to stop being billed for betrayal," I said. He chuckled. "Good answer. Let's draft a response that politely tells her she can keep her mess." We met that afternoon in his office. While he typed, I explained everything. How I'd exposed the affair, how her company had turned on her, how she was now living with her sister. He listened, nodding occasionally, the way lawyers do when they're mentally tallying billable hours. When we were done, he leaned back. "You know, she might come after you for alimony." I raised an eyebrow. "She cheated on me." He shrugged. "Doesn't mean she won't try. In divorce court, morality's just a decorative item." I sighed. "Then I guess I'll bring receipts." He smirked. "You always were the guy who did his homework." By evening, the papers were ready. All I had to do was sign. I stared at the dotted line for a long time. My name looked foreign there, like it belonged to some other version of me. The one who still believed love could survive corporate greed and afterwork cocktails. I signed anyway. Ink never felt so liberating. Alyssa showed up 2 days later. I hadn't seen her in person since the night she packed her things. She looked tired, deflated, like ambition had finally charged interest. "You couldn't even call me before filing," she said. I set down my coffee. "You sent me divorce papers through a stranger, Alyssa. You don't get to play sentimental now." She flinched but recovered fast. "I was hoping we could talk about settlement." "Sure," I said. "Here's my offer. You keep the guilt, I'll keep my peace." She sighed. "You're impossible." "No," I said. "I'm finally consistent." She pulled out a folder. "My lawyer says." I held up a hand. "Stop. If the sentence starts with 'my lawyer says,' then the conversation's already dead." She closed the folder, frustrated. "I didn't mean for things to end this way." I chuckled. "You never mean it. You just do it anyway." We sat in silence for a moment. She looked around the living room. The empty shelves, the missing photos, the absence of her. "It's strange," she murmured. "You really cleaned the place up." "Yeah," I said. "Turns out, when you remove the toxicity, the air quality improves." Her lips tightened. "You're enjoying this." "Enjoying?" "No. Appreciating." "Absolutely." She stood up. "You'll regret treating me like this one day." "I already did," I said. "For 8 years." She left, slamming the door hard enough to make the picture frames rattle. I looked at the door and whispered, "Good luck, Miss Marsh." Calling her Miss felt right. Her new identity fit better when it didn't include me. The following week was a blur of signatures, notarizations, and Ben's dry humor. "You're officially in the system," he said, sliding over the final paperwork. "Congratulations. You're a free man." "Does it come with a manual?" I asked. He grinned. "Just 3 rules. Don't text your ex, don't date a coworker, and for the love of God, don't get married again before tax season." I laughed for the first time in days. The kind of laugh that comes from somewhere deep, past all the bitterness. I'll put that on a mug. When I left his office, the city felt different. Lighter. Like someone had turned off background static I didn't know existed. Divorce wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the one that made sense. A few nights later, Alyssa called again. I debated ignoring it, but curiosity won. "Oliver," she said softly, "I wanted to tell you I've been terminated from the firm." "Terminated?" I repeated. "That's corporate for fired, right?" "Yes." "Guess they finally found out integrity isn't a group project." She ignored the jab. "I'm starting over. New firm. Smaller." "Smaller sounds good," I said. "You'll have fewer people to disappoint." Her tone hardened. You really can't let it go, can you? I did, I said. You're the one calling from the past. She went quiet for a beat. Do you ever miss me? I thought about that. The late night talks, the inside jokes, the version of her that existed before ambition became her religion. Sometimes, I admitted. But mostly, I miss not paying for hotel stays I didn't attend. She exhaled a broken laugh. You always have to get the last word. Not true, I said. This time the court does. When I hung up, I felt free. Not happy, not sad. Just finally untethered. A week later, Ben called to say the judge had signed the decree. Divorced. One word, 12 letters, infinite relief. I poured myself a drink, turned on some Miles Davis, and toasted the quiet. Here's to endings that don't need closure, I said aloud. That weekend, I took Maya to the park. She was 7, all energy and curiosity. Daddy, she said while we sat on a bench eating ice cream. Are you and Mommy friends now? I smiled. We're classmates who don't sit together anymore. She giggled. That's okay. I like it when it's just us. Me too, kid. Me too. Back home, I tucked her in and sat by her bed for a while, watching her sleep. She was the one thing Alyssa couldn't ruin. The one thing that still made sense. Later that night, I pulled out the final divorce document again. There it was, black ink on white paper, the legal equivalent of exhaling. Dissolved. The word looked sterile, but it carried weight. Years of compromise, erased in a paragraph. I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer. Then I poured myself a drink, orange juice this time. The whiskey had done its job. Now I just wanted clarity. The phone buzzed, another unknown number. For a second, I thought it might be Alyssa again. It wasn't. It was a message from Cynthia. Marian asked if she could reach out. She said she's impressed with how you handled things. I smiled. The irony of getting professional validation from my ex-wife CO wasn't lost on me. Tell her thanks, I replied. Honesty's my side hustle now. As I went to bed, I realized something. Revenge hadn't been the point anymore. Peace had. Revenge burns fast, but peace lasts longer, and it doesn't require legal fees. I turned off the light, listening to the quiet hum of the house. No more late-night phone calls. No more fake apologies. Just me, my daughter, and a fridge full of groceries I'd actually bought for myself. Before drifting off, I whispered, to freedom, finally tax-deductible. And for the first time in years, I didn't dream about losing anything. Divorce court is a strange mix between a funeral and a stand-up show. Only you're the punchline, and the audience is legally required to keep a straight face. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of the mirror wearing my best suit and my worst mood. The tie felt too tight, the air too heavy, and my reflection had that look of a man who just realized closure comes with parking fees. Ben, my lawyer, had texted me, "Don't try to be funny. Judges hate funny," which was unfortunate, because sarcasm was the only language I spoke fluently anymore. I got in the car, turned on the radio, and of course the universe queued up a breakup song. I switched it off and drove in silence, practicing my breathing like some kind of meditation app for emotionally exhausted men. The courthouse was already buzzing with people who looked equally miserable. Divorces, custody hearings, financial disputes. Basically the Olympics of regret. I found Ben in the hallway, coffee in hand, looking calm enough to make a monk jealous. Ready, he asked. As I'll ever be, I said. Is there a participation trophy for emotional stability? He smirked. Just don't get disqualified for excessive commentary. When Alyssa arrived, she looked composed. Not glowing, not glamorous, just tired. Her once perfect hair was pulled into a low bun. Her heels looked like they'd lost the will to live, and her eyes darted away from mine as if she could see her own reflection in the wreckage she'd caused. Her lawyer, a tall guy with a voice like an audiobook narrator, greeted Ben with that fake politeness lawyers master early in law school. We took our seats. The judge, a woman in her 50s with reading glasses dangling from a chain, entered like a goddess of weary justice. Let's make this quick, folks, she said. We've got 5 divorces before lunch. She started with the basics: names, addresses, reason for dissolution. Alyssa's lawyer gave the usual speech about irreconcilable differences, and I had to bite my tongue to stop from adding, yeah, mostly between her morals and reality. Then it was my turn. Ben stood up, smooth as butter. Your Honor, he said, we've submitted documentation regarding marital misconduct and financial misrepresentation by the respondent, Mrs. Marsh. The judge adjusted her glasses. I see that. Ms. Marsh, care to respond? Alyssa's lawyer launched into a long, rehearsed speech about how she had been pressured by workplace dynamics, emotionally manipulated by her superior, and made errors in judgment due to undue influence. Basically, he tried to turn her affair into a TED Talk about victimhood. The judge held up a hand. Mr. Shaw was her superior? Yes, Your Honor, the lawyer said earnestly. It was an abuse of power. I couldn't resist. Pretty sure the only power he abused was the company credit card. Ben elbowed me under the table. Don't, he hissed. The judge looked over her glasses at me. Mr. Marsh, are you making jokes in my courtroom? Apologies, Your Honor, I said. Force of habit. I'm a teacher. Sarcasm's part of the curriculum. Her lips twitched, but she moved on. Proceed. Alyssa's lawyer droned on about her years of dedication, her stressful career, her unfortunate entanglement. You'd think she'd just survived a shipwreck. When he finally sat down, the judge turned to Ben. Mr. Jacobs, any comment? Ben stood, buttoning his jacket like he was about to deliver a mic drop. Your Honor, we've also provided receipts, bank statements, and photographic evidence of said entanglement. Additionally, the respondent was terminated from her firm following an internal investigation prompted by Mr. Marsh's whistleblowing. The judge raised her eyebrows. Is that true, Ms. Marsh? Alyssa's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. Terminated for cause? Yes. The judge sighed. Well, that's a first. Usually, these hearings involve he said, she said nonsense. It's refreshing to have documentation. Ben nodded. My client's thorough, Your Honor. He grades research papers for a living. I leaned back, whispering, always cite your sources. A faint chuckle from the court clerk almost made my day. The judge scanned the papers, flipping through with that particular mix of authority and exhaustion. Given the evidence, and given that the respondent's income has significantly decreased due to her own actions, the court sees no grounds for spousal support. Alyssa's lawyer tried to argue. Your Honor, my client's financial situation has changed dramatically. The judge cut him off. Actions have consequences, counselor. She's an adult, not a victim of her own ambition. I swear I heard angels sing. Next came custody. I'd been nervous about that part, but Ben had warned me. Judges love stability. You've got it in spades. Sure enough, the judge looked at me and said, Mr. Marsh, you're seeking primary custody. Yes, Your Honor. My daughter's routine, school, and home life are centered with me. Her mother's current circumstances are transitional. The judge nodded. Mrs. Marsh, any objections? Alyssa looked up, tears in her eyes. I love my daughter. I don't doubt that, the judge said gently. But love doesn't pay rent or guarantee consistency. For now, primary custody goes to Mr. Marsh. Mrs. Marsh will have visitation rights every other weekend. I exhaled, trying not to look victorious. Inside, though, I was doing a mental touchdown dance. The rest of the hearing was a blur of signatures, legal jargon, and whispered arguments between Alyssa and her lawyer. When it was finally over, the judge said, Good luck to both of you. I hope you both learn from this experience. Ben shook her hand, then leaned toward me. Congratulations, he said. You just won the quietest war in history. Outside the courthouse, the air felt cleaner than it had in years. Alyssa caught up to me on the steps. You're really taking Maya from me? I stopped. No, Alyssa. I'm keeping her life stable. There's a difference. She's my daughter too, she said, her voice breaking. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let someone else play husband, I said quietly. She flinched, but didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. Ben clapped me on the shoulder. Drinks. Absolutely. We went to a small bar downtown, the kind that smells like old wood and news stories. Ben ordered whiskey for both of us. To justice, he said. I raised my glass. To documentation. We laughed. For the first time in months, it wasn't bitter laughter. It was real, unfiltered, earned. After a few rounds, Ben leaned back and said, You know, you handled that better than most people I've seen. No yelling, no theatrics. I grinned. Yeah, but inside? Oh, I was hosting a full Broadway production. He laughed. What now? I shrugged. Work, parenting, not repeating history. Maybe finally take that trip to Seattle I've been putting off. You'll be fine, he said. You're one of the rare ones who actually walks away smarter. The next morning, Maya and I made pancakes. She poured too much syrup, and I didn't correct her. Can we call mommy later? She asked. Of course, I said. We'll always call mommy. She smiled, sticky and innocent. Kids have a way of making endings softer than they deserve to be. Later that day, I got an email from Marian Quinn. Short and cold. Mr. Marsh, we've concluded our internal investigation. Mr. Shaw has been terminated effective immediately. We appreciate your cooperation. I read it twice, smiled, and hit delete. I didn't need the confirmation. I already knew. That night, I sat on the porch with a glass of orange juice, whiskey's softer cousin, and watched the sunset paint the sky. My phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Ben. Congrats again, Professor. You officially won your case. The judge signed the final decree. I texted back, thanks. Tell the judge her sarcasm was inspiring. Then I leaned back, let the night breeze hit my face, and thought about everything. How I'd walked into a ballroom a humiliated husband and walked out a man who finally knew his worth. How revenge hadn't ruined me. It had reintroduced me to myself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. And for the first time in a long time, I liked the sound of my own quiet. As the stars came out, I raised my glass one last time and whispered, to peace. The best verdict there is. 6 months after the courtroom curtain closed, my life finally started sounding like background jazz instead of a car alarm. There's a peace that comes from knowing the worst part is already over. The scandal headlines had faded, the lawyers had stopped calling, and my ex-wife had become just another story I didn't need to finish. What used to be drama was now distant echo. It's funny how silence changes its tone. At first, it felt like punishment, the kind of silence that buzzes in your ears and reminds you something's missing. But eventually it turned soft, like white noise that helps you sleep. These days, I woke up early, made real breakfasts, and actually tasted my coffee instead of using it to survive emotional hangovers. Friday evenings were my favorite. The teacher's lounge had a new ritual. 3 of us would meet at Rosie's diner after class, trade war stories about grading, and pretend the world made sense. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. That night, Reggie, the math teacher who could find a joke in a funeral, slid into the booth beside me. Bro, he said, you realize this is the first Friday you haven't mentioned your ex in, like, forever? Really? I said, pretending to think. Guess healing finally hit its due date. He laughed. Man, you're trending in the teacher's lounge. Half the staff's still quoting your courtroom one-liners. I grinned. Hey, if public humiliation gives me a legacy, I'll take it. Rosie, the owner, brought over our usual burgers and fries that could clog a soul. She gave me a warm smile. Heard your ex started at some new firm downtown. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, gossip travels faster than grading deadlines. She came in here last week, Rosie said. Didn't order, just sat with her laptop for an hour. Looked lost. Yeah, I said softly. Ambition without an audience usually does. Reggie nudged me. So what's next for Professor Peaceful? You gonna start dating again? I laughed. Dating? Please. I just got promoted to peace and quiet. Not giving up that corner office anytime soon. He chuckled. Fair. But don't let peace turn into isolation. There's a difference. Noted, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed him. When I got home, the house smelled like detergent and calm. The kind of clean that isn't just physical. Maya was at my sister Jenna's for the weekend, so it was just me and the steady hum of the refrigerator. I poured myself a drink. Orange juice, no whiskey, and turned on some Miles Davis. Sometimes, in those quiet moments, I'd replay everything. The ballroom, the confrontation, the courtroom. I didn't feel anger anymore, just perspective. People always think revenge ends with fireworks. It doesn't. It ends with a man sitting alone, finally breathing without someone else controlling the rhythm. Saturday morning, Jenna called. Hey, she said, Maya's been asking if you're still mad at mommy. Mad? I said. No, just done. She told Maya she's sorry. Good, I said. Maybe she can start with herself. Jenna hesitated. She also asked if she could come by to talk. Here, I asked, surprised. She said she wanted to apologize in person. Closure, maybe. I sighed. Yeah, sure. Closure's the word people use when they're late to accountability. Still, I agreed. And a few hours later, Alyssa showed up at my door. She looked different, simpler. No designer purse, no sharp heels. Just jeans, a cardigan, and a nervous smile. Hey, she said softly. Hey, I replied, holding the door open but not moving aside yet. What's this about? I just wanted to say I'm sorry, she said. For everything. I folded my arms. Everything's a pretty big word. You might want to be specific. She took a deep breath. For the lies. For the way I treated you. For forgetting what mattered. The old me would have jumped in with sarcasm. The new me just nodded. Okay. She blinked. That's it. Okay. Yeah, I said. What else is there? You did it. I survived it. We're here. Her eyes glistened. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, I said. Because forgiveness is overrated. People use it like a coupon for redemption. A tear rolled down her cheek. You really don't care anymore, do you? I hesitated. I cared for a long time. Now I just understand. She wiped her eyes. Maya says you're happier. I am. She nodded. I'm glad. Really. For a brief moment. There was silence. The same kind that used to sting, but now felt like peace settling between us. Before leaving, she said quietly, You were a good husband, Oliver. I smiled faintly. And you were a great lesson. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel triumph. Just finality. The kind that doesn't shout. It sighs. That night, I went to a small bar downtown with Reggie and a few coworkers. Nothing fancy, just laughter, cheap beer, and a jukebox stuck on classic rock. When the bartender asked if anyone wanted to make a toast, Reggie elbowed me. Come on, Mr. Closure, give us one. I stood, raised my glass, and said, To mistakes, the best teachers I've ever had. The table erupted in cheers. Even the bartender clapped. As I sat back down, my phone buzzed. A message from Ben. Congrats, Marsh. Settlement finalized. You're officially debt-free and divorce-free. I grinned and typed back, best 2 words in the English language. When I got home later, the sky was streaked with orange and purple. I stood on the porch, listening to the cicadas, and thought about how different life looked now. The man who once begged for attention was now grateful for silence. The husband who once chased validation now chased pancakes with his daughter on Sunday mornings. A few days later, Maya and I went to the park. She ran ahead, laughing, while I sat on a bench with my coffee. A woman sitting nearby smiled at me. She's adorable, she said. Thanks, I replied. She gets it from her mom's side. The good parts, anyway. We talked for a while. Her name was Claire. She was a single mom, too. A nurse, witty, warm, the kind of person who could make small talk feel like therapy. When she laughed, it sounded genuine, something I hadn't heard in years. After she left, Maya nudged me. You were smiling a lot, Daddy. Was I? Yeah, she said. You should do that more. Out of the mouths of babes, right? That night, after tucking her in, I sat on the couch and thought about how far I'd come. The old version of me had measured success and love by stability. The new one measured it by peace. People always ask what I said that night at the gala after Damien insulted me. What exact words ended it all? The video only caught the toast, not the last line I whispered before walking out. But I remember. I leaned toward him, smiled, and said, I didn't lose my wife tonight. I lost my biggest expense. It was petty. It was perfect. And it was the moment I stopped being the oblivious husband and started being my own damn hero. These days, I still teach English, still correct essays, still hand out grades. But every once in a while, when I'm marking some kid's paper about betrayal or redemption, I smile to myself. Because somewhere out there, Alyssa's probably still rewriting her resume, trying to erase the chapter where she underestimated a man who could write his own ending. And me? I already have mine. Sunday morning came soft and golden. Maya and I made breakfast together, eggs, toast, orange juice. She spilled half of it, but I didn't care. She looked up and said, Daddy, are you happy now? I paused, really thinking about it. Then I smiled. Yeah, kiddo, I think I am. She grinned. Can we make a toast? I laughed. Sure. What are we toasting to? She raised her tiny cup of orange juice. To us. I clinked mine against hers. To us, I echoed. And for the first time since all this started, I realized that was the only toast that ever really mattered.